Today, the December 12th, Saturday. Yesterday, Sayadaw did not have the chance to give the Dhamma talk, as there were some matters that Sayadaw had to attend to yesterday. And Sayadaw arrived here in the Forest Meditation Center this morning, so this evening Sayadaw will be giving talk. Yesterday, while Sayadaw was away, the Venerable Goche Sayadaw gave the talk, and today Sayadaw will give the talk. On previous days, Sayadaw was explaining that in order to discern things that should be discerned, one should be mindful. One should dispel unknowing by being mindful in order to discern. One should discern abhenyaya, things that should be discerned directly, face to face. And one should discern parenyaya, things that should be discerned distinctly, such as this is nama, mentality, this is rupa, materiality, cause, effect. By practicing Satipatthana meditation, one can discern things that should be discerned directly, and one will discern things distinctly. Yogi should first understand what are the things to be discerned. And Sayadaw has been explaining the nama rupa, mind and matter, that arise during seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Touching is quite wide to be explained, and yogis have to be noting mostly with the touching, such as rising and falling of the abdomen. And Sayadaw will continue to explain. And what is left to be explained is thinking. Thinking means that one is not directly seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, or touching, but it is the mental seeing, mental hearing, mental smelling, mental tasting, mental touching. And Sayadaw will explain on it. Sayadaw explains about the thinking. When there are thoughts as well, there are receptor element, striker element, and the ignition element. When the person has thoughts, the person does not actually see or hear things, but there will be mental image, mental sound, mental smell, and so on. In the thinking as well, there is the receptor, striker, and the ignition. The receptor element is called manodwara, the mind door. It is the bhavanga citta, the life continuum consciousness. Bhavanga citta, life continuum consciousness, also arises when the person is asleep. When the person is not asleep, there will be viti citta, the process consciousness, arising in group one after another. In between, there are also 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 moments of Bhavanga Citta, life continuum consciousness. Bhavanga Citta dwells on the Hadaya Vatu, the heart base. So according to Abhidhamma, the heart base, Hadaya Vatu, is in the heart where there is the circulation of blood. Within the heart, there is a part of the heart where there is blood, and Hadaya Vatu, the heart base, is dwelling in a portion of the heart. So it is where the consciousness dwells. It is the materiality. Hadaya Vatu, the heart base, is the materiality where the consciousness takes place. But according to the Western idea, the Westerners believe that the consciousness takes place in the brain. But in Abhidhamma way, the consciousness takes place in the Hadaya Vatu, the heart base, which is located within the person's heart, where the blood circulates. Also, when there is thinking arises in the Hadaya Vatu. Thinking takes place in the Hadaya Vatu, and it is the receptor element. The striker element is Dhamma Ramana, mental object. So the person takes the object by thinking about the object, and at times there are things that automatically arise as thinking. So whether the person deliberately is thinking or whether the thought automatically appears, it seems that the person is seeing, hearing, smelling, but actually the person is not directly seeing, hearing, smelling. It is the mental image that appears, mental sound, mental smell, mental taste that appears as thought. And also there can be thoughts that recall the past experiences. The things that the person experienced in the past can be recorded by sanya, perception. So these experiences that had been recorded by sanya, perception, will appear whenever the person thinks about them. And also, there are times when the person recalls the experiences that had taken place quite recently. And Saraji gives an example. When a person is about to travel, the person will be thinking about the place where he, she will go, and the person will mentally see the place where he, she is going, even though he, she has not been there before. So when the thoughts arise, these mental objects strike on the mind door, which are the Bhavanga Citta. In other words, the thoughts are striking at the Hadaya Vatu, heart base, and there will be contact phassa. When there are pleasant thoughts, there will be pleasant feeling. If there are undesirable thoughts, unpleasant thoughts, there will be sorrow. There will be sorrow, and also there will be depression and so on. So these are Vedana. Whether it is unpleasant feeling or pleasant feeling, they are Vedana. At times, the thoughts also incite neutral feeling, and it is not as obvious. So in this way, when the person thinks about things, there is receptor element, striker element, and the ignition element. So ignition element arises as thinking, knowing, thinking, contact, and thinking, feeling. Even though the person does not directly see or hear, there will be mental image arising that the person mentally sees. And also, when the yogi discerns things, when knowledge arises, there is also the three elements, the receptor element, striker element, and the ignition element. And today, Sayadaw will explain with touching, about touching. Sayadaw will explain how the theory is, how the practice is, combining theory and practice, what will be the results. And Sayadaw will explain what will be the bad consequences by failing to be mindful, and what will be the benefits by being mindful. In seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing, there are the three elements, the receptor element, striker element, and the ignition element. Receptor elements are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And the striker elements are the visible objects, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects. When there is thinking, the mental object strikes on the mind door, and there will be ignition. Seeing, hearing, mentally seeing, mentally hearing, mentally tasting, mentally touching. So in this way, the receptor element, striker element, and the ignition element arise, and there will be thinking, knowing, thinking, contact, and thinking, feeling. So these are the objects that should be observed. These are the objects that should be discerned.
Idiyari Mimi Tana Mawari Ni Changya Yi Jangwari Sisi Nilwari Tu Ketana Tu Jawna Tu Wari Tu Joda Tu Sisabia Sisi Nijara Kirijara There are Santati Kawara and Santisa the Asimapia Wari Me and me and Sisi Nijara Me Kawani ya Taibira Chini Ruchi Tita no Tiara Pasu the body has seen a long necessity of the Vaniro Tilu Tiara မှန်ကတော့ကြောင်းနေနေတာပဲဒီကတော့ဒီဟောင်းနေအောင်ဆုံးစီပြီးတော့နောက်ထပ်ရည်အတိရည်ဖြစ်ပြီးဆက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဖြစ်နေတော့ကြည့်လိုက်တဲ့အခါမှာဒါပဲလို့ထင်ရတော့မှန်ကတော့စိတ်ကံနဲ့မလပ်ပါလိဟောင်းဖြစ်ကြောင်းနေပြီးတော့ဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတော့လည်းပဲသာသဘောအရအလားတူထားပါလေ
Sayadaw explains that these nama rupa are arising like a stream of current. They are arising continuously, just like a stream of current. So these nama rupa are arising as cause and effect continuously, and it is called Paṇḍitā. The example is the stream of current. When the person sits on the bank of the stream and take a look, the person may think it is the same water, but actually it is not. The old water flowing, new water arising. In this way, the current keeps on flowing, but the person may think it is the same water, but actually the stream is flowing every single second. In the same way, the nama rupa that are arising constantly, one after another, the old giving rise to new, and it is not the same nama rupa that are arising one after another. So one has to understand in theory that the nama rupa are arising one after another every single second continuously.
စိတ်ကများမှာတော့နည်းနည်းယုံနာတရားတွေပါအခန္ဓာဒိဋ္ဌဘုရားတရားတွေဟာအများအားဖြင့်အချင်းချင်းကြောင်းကျိုးနှီးနယ်ပြီးတော့ဖြစ်နေကြတယ်ဆိုတော့ဒီဒါတွေလည်းပဲချက်ပြီးတော့ပြောကြပါပဲဒါပေမဲ့လို့တရားအထုတ်ရုံကသိသာရုံကနားလည်လို့ရှိရင်လည်းတရားထုတ်လို့ဖြစ်နေတာမဟုတ်လို့ပြီးတော့သဘောရတော့ချက်ပြီးတော့ပြောလို့မလိုသေးပါဘူးဒီမှာပြောချင်တာတော့ဒုတိယကန္တကြောင့်အကြောင်းကိုပြောချင်တာပါပဲဒုတိယကန္တကြောင့်ဆိုတာနေအောင်ရှိတွေ့လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်နေအောင်ရှိနဲ့ရှိတွေ့တဲ့အကြောင်းဟာဒီနဲ့လောင်သားကြီးကြီးသွားလို့ရှိရင်တော့ဒီလောင်သားကြီးကြီးခုသွားတာပဲ
In the text, it explains that the nama rupa are arising, connecting to each other as cause and effect, and they are arising as receptor elements, striker elements, and the ignition element. And Sayadaw explains that there is the Surya Kanda, a kind of stone, and when the sun rays touch on the stone surface, the stone can burn the fuel. And to explain practically with an example, there is the magnifying glass, and under the magnifying glass, a piece of paper should be put under the magnifying glass. And when the magnifying glass is placed under the sun rays, and the sun rays should pass through the magnifying glass onto the piece of paper. When the sun rays converge through the magnifying glass, it will produce heat and the piece of paper will burn. So in this example, if the question goes, where did the spark come? So the spark did not arise beforehand, and the spark did not arise automatically. Where did the spark come up from? Because the sun rays are passed through the magnifying glass onto the piece of paper, the spark arises, burning the paper. So only when these things come together, when the sun rays pass through the magnifying glass onto the piece of paper, will there be the spark and the burning of the paper. So the paper will burn only if the sun rays pass through the magnifying glass. And the sun rays pass through the magnifying glass will produce heat and it will burn the paper. So only if there is the sun rays, the magnifying glass and the paper, then the paper will be burnt. So without these things, the paper will not burn. So in the example, with the example, one can understand that things are arising in cause and effect. Because there are the certain causes, the effect takes place. Yogis have to be mindful at the moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing, and yogis should note them right away. As soon as the yogi sees, hears, smells, tastes, touch, and know, and yogi should note them without missing, without failing. What the yogi has to do is note the object with aim and effort, without missing, without failing. There is nothing else that the yogi should do apart from noting the presently arising object with aim and effort. In the example, when the paper burns, when the paper kept under the magnifying glass in the sun burns, the person might ask, where did the flames come from? And the answer might be, well, it comes from paper. Well, it is not wrong, but it is not completely right. It is the paper that is burning. If the paper is kept alone, it will not burn. Sun rays alone will not burn. However, the sun is shining over dry grass and paper, the sun rays alone will not burn. And also, magnifying glass alone will not burn. Only because the sun rays converge through the magnifying glass onto the paper, which makes the paper burn. In this example, receptor element is compared to the magnifying glass. Striker element is compared to the sun rays. Ignition element is compared to the burning of the paper, and it is arising as cause and effect. The cause for the paper to burn is the sun rays and the magnifying glass, because the paper is placed under the magnifying glass, under the sun. It is not the creator that is creating the paper to be burnt. It is not the Allah or any other creator that is creating. But it is the sun rays and the magnifying glass that makes the paper burn. So in the same way, if there is the receptor element and the striker element, when the striker element strikes the receptor, there will be ignition. And these nama rupa are arising as cause and effect. And the yogi understand them in theory, but as the yogi practice himself, yogi will come to understand cause and effect through the practice. To explain in brief, there are 6 kinds of receptor elements, 6 kinds of striker elements, and the ignition element. So these receptor elements, striker elements, and the ignition element are the field of objects to be noted. In brief, one should note the nama rupa that should be discerned. And they are the 5 khandha, 5 aggregates, but Sayadaw will not explain as it may be confusing. So in brief, there are nama and rupa, mentality and materiality. The nama rupa are called bhuta. And Buddha said, bhutan, bhutato, pasati. One should observe and discern the nama rupa in the way they really are. So the sentence bhutan, bhutato, pasati covers the whole Satipatthana Sutta. It is the main meaning, the main gist of Satipatthana practice. The nama rupa are called bhuta. Bhuta are the nama rupa that really exist, that are really present. And bhutato means in the way they really exist, in the way they really are. And pasati means to know by observing, by noting, by being mindful. So bhutan, bhutato, pasati means one should be mindful, one should observe, one should be mindful of the nama rupa in the way they really are, in the way they really exist. The nama rupa are called bhuta, and Sayadaw explains why the nama rupa are called bhuta. So the reason is Sathasakam Pacayehi Jatata, meaning that nama rupa are called bhuta because they arise due to the relevant cause. For example, the ear, the ear has the cause, citta, consciousness, utu, temperature, and ahara, nutriment. So, in order that the ear sensitivity to be good, the person should be in moderate temperature. The person must take nutritious food. and so on. So having good climate, good temperature, having taken nutritious food with nutriments, the person's ear sensitivity will be clear enough for him or for her to hear. So the citta, consciousness, uttu, temperature, and ahara, nutriment, are the causes that make the ear sensitivity to be good. Based on karma, based on the deeds that the person had done in the past, with the causes that are arising in the present, such as citta, uttu, and ahara, the Buddha, the nama rupa, are taking place. The Buddha, the nama rupa are arising. In the example of the sound, there are certain sounds that are produced by the consciousness. For example, talking, conversation are the sounds that are produced by the consciousness. They are mind-made materiality. The sounds of conversation or talking are the mind-made materiality. But the sound of the breeze or the sound when the trees or the branches strike each other are caused by uttu. In the body as well, there are sounds that are mind-made and there are sounds that are produced by the uttu. So the kind of the sound of gas in the abdomen can be heard, and the sound of the gas in the abdomen are produced by the uttu. So the nama rupa arise due to the relevant cause, and there will be hearing contact, hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling. Because there are ears to hear, hearing takes place. Because there are sounds to be heard, hearing takes place. So hearing takes place due to the relevant cause. If the yogi is being mindful, yogi can discern the nama rupa that are arising due to the relevant cause. These nama rupa are called Buddha as they arise, as they exist due to their relevant cause. So within ourselves, within oneself, there are the nama rupa that are arising due to circumstances, due to relevant causes, and these nama rupa are called Buddha as they really arise, as they really exist due to relevant cause. In the hearing, there are the nama rupa, mind and matter. So if the hearing is analyzed, there are only two things, nama and rupa. The ear and the sound waves are rupa, materiality. Hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling are nama, mentality. So in the hearing, there are two kinds of materiality and three kinds of mentality that are to be discerned. So these are the paramattha, the ultimate truth that can be discerned by oneself, by noting, and these are arising within oneself. Bhutan Bhuta Topassati, in order to discern them, one should be mindful at the moment of hearing. One should observe, one should note, one should be mindful in order to discern them. One should look, one should observe in order to see. In order to note the object, one should aim one's noting mind onto the hearing when hearing takes place, and one should aim and direct one's noting mind so that the noting mind will be direct with the hearing. So in this way, in order to note hearing, one should aim one's noting mind onto the object, and one should put effort so that the noting mind will reach the object. One should note hearing as soon as the hearing takes place. Yogi should not be cold or sluggish or slow, but one should note as soon as hearing takes place. One should aim and direct. One should put effort so that hearing will be noted as soon as hearing takes place. When sati, mindfulness, and samadhi, concentration, become strengthened, one will discern any one of these nama rupa that are arising at that moment. By discerning any one of these nama rupa, it is said that the rest are also known. And Sayadaw explains that practicing Vipassana meditation is doing research within oneself. Vipassana practice is the self-research. So one does not need material instruments in order to do self-research. The instrument that the person needs is aiming, directing, and the effort. So these are the instruments that the yogi needs in order to discern. As soon as hearing takes place, one should be mindful. One should note it as hearing, and being mindful for 1 minute. There will be 60 moments of viriya, sati, and samadhi, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. If there is one noting per second, there will be 60 moments of noting in 1 minute. And if the yogi is noting continuously for 5 minutes, there will be 300 moments of viriya, sati, and samadhi. So noting continuously, viriya, sati, and samadhi will develop and increase, and it is called bhavana. And Sayadaw will continue to explain from both theory and practice. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.